We're starting off good, aren't we? You might be thinking, is this really that much of an action film? Well, from what I've gathered, it is. Kangaroo Jack is. What even is this? I don't even know what this is supposed to be. I can never tell if this is supposed to be based on a cartoon or if it's trying to be its own thing, but regardless, as you can clearly tell from this poster, this is just awful. I can't even say anything about this movie. This movie is beyond awful. It is very ugly looking. It just has very bad to think about. I don't even know why I need to say anything. Like, look at it. Does that look pleasing? No. Okay, this movie is bad. It's so annoying. It's weird. It's just not something I want to talk about. And I know I could just say that for every entry, but this is really something I don't think needs an introduction. Cause just look at it. This movie is ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous to think about. Now, the Spy Kids movies have been an interesting lineup of films, with the first Spy Kids movie being successful yet kind of weird looking back. Same with the second Spy Kids. That is the third Spy Kids. This installment focuses on video games and whatever. It also focuses on being in 3D. Apparently, there's this big trend where the third installment of a popular movie trilogy is in 3D. Jaws did this, Friday the 13th did this. Okay, a lot of movies did this. And Spy Kids was one of them. So we consist of non-stop 3D effects, with the whole issue being the only thing you can find in these type of movies is just stuff coming towards you. It's not really any immersive 3D, it's just stuff coming towards you. That's really all these movies do. And this movie's the best example of it. It also has terrible green screening, some very bad effects. I know it's supposed to be set in a video game, but I feel like that's just their best way of getting past it all. But yeah, this movie is weird. It's kind of not something I like to think about as an fun action film, but considering that it is, I consider it to be an awful action movie. It's ridiculous. What the hell? Now, I know what you're thinking. No, this is not the Avengers you think of. I know it's that name, but turns out there was this British TV series from the 60s called The Avengers that focused on a group of spy agents or whatever. I actually don't know anything about the show. All I know is that it's called The Avengers and is not at all related to our Avengers. This movie, based on the show from the 90s, is a completely different thing. It's about as goofy as you can imagine, but yeah, it's really a goofy mess. It's supposed to be cool and whatever, but the movie just comes off as annoying and not very funny. It focuses on humor. It's trying to do the humorous part, but it plays that part really badly. None of the jokes are funny, and tying it into all the action just doesn't work. I know I've seen that before for other movies, but this movie proves it how it doesn't work at all. I just really find this movie to be boring at best and just nothing exciting. Even when they do try to be exciting, it comes out as boring. It's about like an inferior version of the other Avengers. Anyway, speaking of which, kind of ironic, Captain America. This rare film that barely anybody remembers was released in 1990. This version of Captain America is a supposed to be a more comic accurate version, as you can tell. The problem is, a lot of what we could expect from a Captain America movie doesn't shine a lot here. Not only from the lame action, of course, but there's the problem that this movie falls with kind of falling flat through most of the middle act. From what I remember of this movie, there's nothing happens when there should something happen. Whenever something does happen, it's either corny or just nothing necessary. This movie just kind of throws all this Captain America stuff in the wrong areas. I could say this, son, but this was just the first attempt at bringing Marvel's iconic American superhero to the big screen. And it obviously didn't work too well. So barely anybody saw it, and the only people who did saw it were when it was released in VHS. Now we have a better Captain America, and because of that Captain America, we forget this one existed. All right, let's go on to DC now. We just talked about bootleg Marvel, then real Marvel, and now DC. DC's Steel, starring Shaquille O'Neal, who you could argue is a great basketball player, but he is a terrible actor. Shaquille has starred in some movies, not many, but the ones he did star in, he was in some pretty bad roles. And with the roles he was given, it was the way he played them. There was nothing about him that we cared about other than him being a tall, famous basketball player. So when he was cast as Steel, we thought that should be good. Turned out this movie wasn't good. It was bland. It had no excitement. The effects were dumb. The suit design was dumb. And this movie is just a really dumb. I would love to see Steel come back in sometime, maybe in the new DC universe. But for now, this is the only Steel movie we have. Steel should return. We need to see Steel again in a much better form. A form that we can take seriously. A form that's not goofy or lame like this version. Just a form that really does define Steel. The only problem is a lot of the DC movies we've gotten recently have been too goofy. So hopefully that will change soon. But if it doesn't, then I guess this is the best we can get. I've already talked about this movie. Based on an anime that I don't watch because I don't really have much association with watching anime, Dragon Ball Evolution is about as annoying and completely unfaithful as an adaptation can get. It's disrespectful is what I'm trying to say. This movie is a huge disrespect to what it's based on. It's trying to get all of the fun Dragon Ball fans onto the screen, but it comes off as something that's corny and not fun at all. The problem with this movie is that it tries to Americanize an anime. Take something from Japan and make it as American as ever. So instead of focusing on all the fun stuff we remember from the cartoon, it's mostly essentially what you get when you have the Karate Kid movies and the Spider-Man movies put together. Something that's just about a teenage boy, all that. It's nothing unique like it was. I know I stated I don't really care for the cartoon, but I do understand it. And I do respect how popular it is. So this movie, I at least know, is a huge insult. Alright, let's go back to DC now with this mess. Batman and Robin. Of course, I've already talked about this movie once, so I might as well just bring it up again. With Batman and Robin, we now have a very terrible movie. George Clooney would look good as Batman, but it turns out he was awful as him. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who you could think would be good as the Freeze, turned out to have a bunch of terrible freeze puns and just be not as important as fun as we thought. Uma Thurman, who actually doesn't do that bad of a Poison Ivy, still didn't come off as serious as we should have her. The problem with this movie is that it's too comic book cheesy. And I understand that it is based on a comic book, but considering how dark and epic the previous Batman movies were, it's kind of ridiculous how we're going this far to being all cheesy and stuff. And I just don't get it. I really don't like how they treat a lot of this stuff. We have all these characters who we could get involved in some nice situations, but what we get instead are lame, very unimaginative, and stupid things. This really feels like just a Batman movie done wrong. So, any Batman movie to come will focus on everything Batman related, apart from what this movie tried to accomplish. Now, here's a movie based on a sort of anime, but not really. Actually, honestly, Avatar: The Last Airbender, I don't actually consider an anime. It's more of a cartoon that pays tribute to anime. So I do watch it. It's definitely considered to be one of the greatest cartoons of all time, which I certainly agree with. The movie, on the other hand, God, what have they done? This movie doesn't Americanize it, because it is already American, but it does whitewash a lot of it. A lot of the regions and cultures that the cartoon had are replaced with a bunch of terrible white actors who don't provide actual good performances. We also get some effects that are lame and not cool at all. We get some changes that make no sense, and it just comes off as the worst way to adapt this show on the big screen. I think a live action movie based on this could work, but what we got was a mess, a huge mess. Now we do know there's going to be a live action show for Netflix, and even though I consider it to be stupid, but I could say it could work better than this, because maybe it'll at least focus more on being faithful and not throwing all this M. Night Shyamalan stuff. So yeah, for what we have here, hopefully nothing we get will be anything like this. Battlefield Earth. So John Travolta is an alien. in the most quirkiest and dumbest acting ever. This movie I've already discussed. I'm sure you know how I feel about it, but if you don't, this is the worst sci fi movie I've ever seen. It's like discount Star Wars, or discount any good sci fi movie ever. I don't even know what else I could say about it. I have not much else to think about. From what I've seen of this movie, it comes off as incredibly annoying and incredibly terribly put together. It's badly written, it's badly acted, and just poorly followed. I couldn't follow the movie because I spent too much time cringing over the performances or just laughing at how much I'm wasting my time with this, with stuff that could be awesome, but just comes off as annoying and it doesn't come across the right way as it should. This movie is about as action packed as you could imagine. The action is terrible CG effects. Like, what else can I say? It's just bad CGI. I've already said enough about it. We have these products that try to give the movie a good advertising but come across as unimportant and don't do anything for the movie. We have all these big celebrity stars who are don't really have any reason to do this and I feel like are wasting their time. I have nothing else to say. You get the drill. This is the worst anime movie of all time, and it's definitely the worst in all of the genres it provides.